In this video learning series, I'll be installing AccuSQL 2017. More specifically, I'll be installing the software, opening it for the first time, entering my activation code, at which time it will log in automatically to a tutoring sample database that's running in non-SQL Server native mode. I'll then install the SQL Server native connectivity client, which enables me to connect to a SQL Server database. I'll create a blank database in AccuSQL. It'll create it in SQL Server. I'll connect to that SQL Server database that I just created, and then I'll access information for importing data. If you're an existing user and you want to upgrade an older AccuSQL database to version 2017, I have a database operations video out there on our YouTube channel that will show you that process. Alright, so here I am in my folder. This could be your USB key if this is a new software that's been shipped to you. If that's the case, you can just open AccuSQL.exe. This is the installer launcher, at which point I have lots of different options, but one of which is to install AccuSQL 2017. If I want to skip that, if I go directly to the AccuSQL 2017 dist for distribution folder, I have a setup.exe. I'll double-click that to launch the installer. And I'll click Next. Read and accept the license agreement. Click Next. And you can put your user or organization information if you'd like there. I'll click Next. And the default install path, I would recommend keeping that as is, which is C program files x86 AccuSQL 2017. If it's a 64-bit PC, you wouldn't have the x86 part if it was 32-bit. I'll click Next. I would also recommend installing for all users, so anyone who uses the computer. And then the install process will begin. All right, once that completes, I'll just leave launch the program checked and click finish, and it will copy some files out the first time and then ask for an activation code. I'll click yes. Now that will be shipped with your software package on new installs. If you're upgrading as one of our support members, the key will be shipped with the installer. I'll go ahead and paste my key and click OK. And then it will open AccuSQL. I can then log in with the default 9 ones, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ones, enter, and then the password is all caps new, and I'll press enter. It will warn me that I'm still using the ones and new, which everyone knows, so I need to go in and change that. And here I am opening AccuSQL 2017. You'll see at the bottom it says I am not connected to a SQL Server database yet. Alright, so the next step is I'm going to go to the folder where AccuSQL 2017 is installed, and that's C, program files x86 in my case, AccuSQL 2017, and in here I have a folder called SQL drivers. Okay, here I can install the SQL Server native connectivity client. If it's a 64-bit PC, it would be SQL and CLI underscore x64. You wouldn't have the x64 if it's a 32-bit PC. So if you have a program files x86 folder, it's going to be a 64-bit. Okay, if you don't, if it just says program files, then you would install the 32-bit. All right, so I'll go ahead and run that installer. I'm going to click Next, can accept the license agreement, put my information. Now I don't need to have the SDK. I can leave things just as they are. Click Next, and then install. And by the way, if you skip this step, if you forget to install the native driver, when you try to connect to a SQL Server database, you'll get an OLEI dispatch exception error. So if that's the case, you know you need to go back and install this native client driver. Alright, so that's finished. Now I'm going to click Database on the right, and then I have an option that says Create Blank SQL DB. and then I get to put in my connection parameters to my SQL Server database. I will need SA privileges, or at least DB creator privileges, but I recommend SA in order to actually create the database. So I'll put in my server information. In my case, I have a port defined. If not, you wouldn't need to put a port. If it's the default, I think it's 1433, then you wouldn't need to worry about the port. All right, and then I'll put in my SA credentials here. I can test my connection, and then I can name the database what I'd like. So I'll just call this one ESI 2017. Also, at this point, if you want to use SQL Server Authentication, which I would recommend, you can create a public account at the time you create the database, and then the users can, you can enter that public account for them to actually connect. So I'll go ahead and do that. To keep it simple, I'll just make it AccuTrack. And now I'll click Create Blank Database. And then it'll run through the process of actually creating that database in SQL Server, putting all the tables in there, everything we need for use. All right, so that's complete. I can close. My next step is to go to database location, and I'm going to pick SQL Server mode now. Click Next. Get to put in my server information again. SQL Server Authentication, and I'm going to use AccuTrack. That's the one I just created when I created my database. And then I click the database drop-down. That may take a moment or two to populate. I have quite a few databases out there, but I'm going to pick my new ESI 2017. I can test connection if I'd like. Now I'm going to save the connection. And it says I must completely restart the application for changes to take effect. So I'll say OK, close, and then exit AccuSQL completely. Now it's wanting to back up my native database, but there's no reason, or my tutoring sample, and there's no reason for me to do that. Now I would have a shortcut on my desktop if I was showing my desktop, but I'm hiding all my cluttered icons. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my C program files, x86 AccuSQL 2017 folder, and the main executable file is AccuSQL 2017.exe. Again, you'd have a shortcut on the desktop, but I'll go ahead and open that. And it's still 9 ones and new when I created that blank database, same login. And now I have a completely empty database. So you can see it doesn't say native mode anymore. I'm now in SQL Server mode. I can verify that by looking here. So that's my connection to my ESI 2017 database. I have no students. I have no categories or activities. So this is a brand new blank database that I would then begin building. Now, one thing I would show you, if I went back to the sign-in screen, you would see it was taking up the entire desktop. So this is a sign-in station for students. You don't want them to get behind the software, so that would run in what we call kiosk mode. However, if you're an administrator, you want to be able to get AccuSQL out of the way. So how you can do that is just go to Sign-in Setup and then Setup. And right down here there's a checkbox that says Run in Kiosk Mode. So I'm going to uncheck that and save. And now when I return to my sign-in screen, it's smaller and I can minimize the program if I want to. Back in as admin. Now with a blank database, the next step would be to import the data that I'm going to be using for students to sign into my center. There's lots of different things I can import. So I'm going to go to Database, Import. Okay, and I don't have any files or anything yet to import, let's say. So I can click right here, Need Help, click here. That'll go out to the web. And then I have lots and lots of information about importing data. All of the information you can import, what's included with each of those tables. I have sample import files, and I have a webinar on importing data. All right, now if you're an existing client, you would be upscaling your database from the older version to 2017, and all of the data would remain intact. So if you already had your students, your courses, your registration, all of that information in your database, it would continue to be there. All right, and that's it. Thank you.